Hey, this week on the Legacy Podcast with your winning coach, Kinsley Jordan, we're talking about training your mind to execute excellence. Change your body, change your mind. Stay tuned. It's your weekly inspiration of what you need most right here. I'm your host for Legacy, once again, Kinsley Jordan, your winning coach, as we help you right here to crush your goals, ignite your dreams, and forge your legacy in your life as we pick up week number 2, part number 2 of one of my favorite subjects of internally thinking mentally. How do we succeed? It's our podcast, what we've been talking about with a hard look inside.
Yeah.
I got Brittany Giuliano once again right here. She's in her master's program to be a psychologist.
Professional counselor.
Professional counselor. Yeah. It's the brain people. They're all they all are smarter than me when it comes to stuff like this. But last podcast we were talking specifically about how do we introspection? How do we have a good objective look at ourselves of how we think and not only how we think, but how do we frame ourselves as we get ready to accomplish goals? Yeah. And what I'm super excited about this specific podcast session because we're talking about not just the mental process, because last week we talked about fast thinking and slow thinking, how fast thinking is being reactive kind of and slow thinking is being proactive. Yeah. But now, how do we get ourselves prepared for it? How do we create a physical culture, a psychological, physiological culture so that we're prepared to step into this place? Because physiology has a lot to do with how we're prepared to succeed.
Psychology for sure. Yeah.
You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to succeed.
Right.
Why?
Exactly. And I think as we're talking, because if you're listening, hopefully you have these goals or these things that you're trying to reach, whether it be a business or personal, that kind of thing. But I said it a lot in the last podcast, but your success is 80% psychology and 20% skills. And this is what I think. I think we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't execute daily or accomplish what we want to daily, then we're never going to reach our goals. Yeah. And here's the thing, if we're not in a good mental state, because we've all been there, we've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. And our psychology or the way we're thinking that day, we are not in it. We go to work, we're sitting there, we grab our coffee, we're not accomplishing anything we set out to accomplish because mentally we're not prepared to execute. And I think that that's the difference between doers and watchers, is that the doers know how to execute. And here's the important part. Executors can be on mentally in the snap of a finger. Wow. Because if you want to execute every day, because that's the way that you accomplish your goals, is you have to execute. Yeah. The way you execute every day is you can train your mind mentally to be on, ready to execute every single morning. Yeah. And I think that's the important part of accomplishing our goals. Yeah, completely. So today, as we dive into this and unpack it, our part number 2 is focusing on change your body, change your mind. Yeah. And it's one of those things you think about, when you look at the habits of highly effective people, there's multiple books talking about what are the habits effective people do. There's a couple basic ones that I've heard multiple people talk about. Mark Cuban, who you've seen on Shark Tank, I'm sure multiple times. A lot of these high level CEOs, these executive thinkers that I would say, they have these habits and these mindsets where they physically train themselves, they discipline themselves. I mean, one of my friends who's a venture capitalist out of Boston, he was saying there's been multiple CEOs he calls from, and those are the type of people who are talking to the Apples, the Googles, these people that he called him and he's like, why are you out of breath, man? And he was like, I'm on the treadmill. And it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. And you wouldn't think a CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation is on a treadmill at 2:00 in the afternoon. Right. But it's these habits that they have to get them in the right mental state to constantly execute at a level of excellence. Right. So as we dive into this piece, really those are kind of the lines we're focusing at. How do we get ourselves to a place where we can execute at a level of excellence each and every day? Yeah. Because it sounds exhausting. Oh my gosh, yeah, right? Let's just think very practically for you guys listening. So you wake up in the morning, just like we all do. Yeah. And let's just say that we woke up on the wrong side of I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And then let's say Kinsley down the street, him and Brooke woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but we have a podcast to do in 30 minutes. Yeah. But we mentally are not prepared to come to where we're at right now and accomplish this. So what are some very practical things that we can do? Well, like you said, you can actually do things physiologically that actually change your mental mindset to get you prepared to execute for the day. So let me just share like this brief example. They did this experiment at one of the colleges. And what they did was they took a whole bunch of students, and the students had no idea what they were there for. Yeah. And so they gave all the students a pen, and they gave them a sheet of paper that had the daily comics for their newspaper. And they had each student review how funny the comic was, the comic section. And so what's funny though is they had half the students take the pen, put it in their mouth, in their teeth like this. Yeah. And it actually, they didn't know what was happening, but it actually created them to smile when they did that. So while they were reading the comic and grading how funny it was, they were smiling. They didn't know it, but they were. And in the other group, they had to purse their lips and have the pen in their mouth. And that group didn't understand, hey, I'm actually frowning. They didn't know that. But while they were critiquing this comic, they were frowning. And what the crazy part is the people that were smiling while they were critiquing this funny comic section thought it was 10 times more funnier than the average person. And the people who were frowning while they were reviewing this comic section actually thought it was less funny, 10 times less funny than the average person. And so,
no way.
Yeah, what is absolutely crazy about this is that you can trick your mind based off of what you do with your body or physiologically. You can trick your mind to get into a happy state or into a state where you're ready to execute. Yeah. And so, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about your daily, like how, I'm not trying to interview you, but like, how do you have with your daily habits?
Should I lay down on the couch, please? So when I was 4, no, I'm just kidding.
But like with your daily habits, because you lead, a big place on the base, like you're up in leadership on the base. So how do you walk in every day to lead and be in the right mental state? Because you can't be off, or else your whole team is going to suffer. So what's one of your daily habits to get yourself into that?
Yeah. So I actually have, I don't think I've actually ever mentioned it. I use a planner, and I don't get paid for it or anything at all, but it's a planner, honestly, that has changed my life of how I look at myself and efficiency and effectiveness. And we'll put it, Nick remind us to put it in the comments afterwards. But it's the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt. And what it does is it forces you to create rituals. So you have morning rituals. Oh, cool. I have my work day rituals, work morning rituals, my work evening rituals when I'm leaving work, and then my evening rituals. And a ritual sounds like something weird, but it's literally just a habit. Think of it like a morning habit. Right. So every morning I have a 3-hour and 10-minute habit. That I have written down. I'd get up and go get my planner. I should have done that. But a 3 hours and 10-minute habit. So I know that for me to be successful, to go into work, I have my priorities. One, I wake up, I do 50 push-ups, I drink 2 glasses of water, and I go read my Bible for 30 minutes. Yeah. And at that point, after 30 minutes, and I know I give myself the time to be able to allocate it. I go to the gym. I have an 1.5-hour workout. I come back. I'll shower up, change, and then I have time to read a secular book. I say a secular book, a leadership book, something I want to propel myself into. And at 8:10, I'm leaving the house. And you would think that if you write it down, it's easy. Come on. When that alarm goes off at 5 a.m., it sucks. Right? It's terrible. Yeah. But then literally, as you mentioned that, like if I don't do my morning ritual, or I'm off, man, the whole day is off. Like I'm constantly trying to get caught up. I'm not in the mental place. I don't feel prepared. Right. I don't feel like I'm going to be successful. I feel like I'm constantly on my heels. And frankly, I even find myself more agitated, more frustrated. Right. Now that you mentioned that. Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about what you're talking about, because we'll definitely talk about the books and that kind of thing about your ritual that you do. But so you talked about your workout and like, so change your body, change your mind. You talked about, like how you work out, and people don't understand. Like, I think some people work out in the evening, and that's totally great. But when you work out in the mornings, you are creating endorphins in your body and that's all. That all involves your mental state. And one thing that I started doing is on my way to work, I realized the importance of like finding joy through, this is going to sound really funny, but I will turn up my country music because I like country music, and I will just like start dancing to it, my favorite country song. And so I just decided that's what I have to do in order to get myself ready. And what's funny is we all had a long day. So we both work at the church. You're the worship pastor and whatnot. Yeah. But we had a long day last night. And what was cool with the whole worship team, because everybody was exhausted. We were all exhausted, but we had to execute for service. I just saw everybody start jumping up and down. Everybody started jamming out. And how crazy is it that it completely changed?
It completely changed the atmosphere. I mean, when you think about faith and worship and working in the church, like it's not a performance. It's never a performance. So you have to get yourself in a minded state where what you're doing is focused on God and creating an environment where people can encounter Him and love Him, and the whole focus has to be on Him.
Yeah.
And when you're tired, when you don't feel it, and insert any goal that you have, anything that you want to do. Sometimes, man, you don't want to do it. You're exhausted. You're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But you have to do something to change yourself, change your immediate environment, to change your attitude. And a lot of times, I've heard people say, oh, how do you work out in the morning? Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't understand how people work out at night. I don't. Like, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And because I've tried doing my morning ritual activities in the evening time, and it is an epic failure. I mean, I just don't do it. I don't work out as hard. You've poured your effort and energy into everything else. And I mean, you're 100% right. It cages you and frames what you're doing in the right perspective for you to be able to launch into success that day. By those physical, I guess, barriers, or not barriers, boundaries that you set up in your life, as saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to succeed in this.
Last thing that I had to say about this part is that, so I'm the youth pastor as well at World Harvest Church. And so I work with a lot of Gen Zs and young leaders, very young leaders. And one thing that I always tell my leaders is, hey, when you come into this building, you have to check your baggage at the door. When you go to your place of work, your place of business, even if you're not the manager yet or the business owner yet, you have to, the sign of a great leader is you can check your baggage at the door. So how do you do that? This is going to be like, oh, are you serious? But fake it till you make it. So walk in and you might be mad at your spouse. You might be mad at your kids. You might be exhausted. But just like, as I was talking about that experiment that they did, the moment you decide to put a smile on your face and walk in and fake that thing, all of a sudden, based off of your physiology, when you change that from, oh, I'm so mad, and then you start changing that, your mental state subconsciously is starting to change. And eventually, before you know it, like, you'll get there. One thing that I do, jump up and down, dance, smile. You got to get those endorphins flowing. Make your body work for your mind.
I'm reminded. Did you ever get in trouble when you were younger?
No.
Did you actually?
Yes, a few times. I think I got one spanking. No, I'm just kidding. I did. I got in trouble.
Okay, what did your mom? So you don't realize this. My wife, Brooke, this is my sister-in-law. So Brooke and Brittany are sisters, and Brooke, she may have gotten in trouble a couple more times than you.
Oh, she did.
But there was the one thing that her parents, your mom and dad, would always make her do if you got in trouble for her and her twin brother Brandon, is that they, if they were fighting or something, their mom would make them hold hands, and they would have to jump up and down, and they'd have to say, I'm God's joy kid. I'm God's joy kid. And Brooke tells the story, it's so funny, that she would be so mad. She's like, I'm not joyful. But by the time that you're done jumping up and down a couple times, you're giggling and you're laughing, and whatever you were mad about was literally, I mean, it's not as funny or silly as that moment is, and it just changes your whole attitude about things. And in my own life, I found myself, because when you get married, nobody tells you it's going to be hard.
Who knew?
Nobody tells you it's going to be probably the greatest challenge you have. But one of the things I noticed that when I come in from work from the base, I would come home and I was wearing whatever had happened that day was just on me. And I'd come in, and Brooke could even tell from my expression just how I was, be like, hey, how are you? How was your day? And just kind of that deflated attitude, that deflated tone of, hey, what's going on? It sets an entire atmosphere and tone for what the rest of the evening is going to be like.
It's true.
And when you think about it, so you get up in the morning, I have a 3-hour and 10-minute ritual that I do in the morning. The kids are normally in bed, or when I come back, I actually drop them off at school, because that's about the right time to drop them off. And So the only time you're really getting to spend time with family is the end of the day.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you come in with this attitude of being exhausted and being worn down. What is your children's? What is your family's? What are the people around you? What's their perspective of who you are?
Exactly. Yeah.
If that's the time that they get to see you and spend with you. So the first thing I've started doing when I come home is I drop my bags and I yell at the kids. I'm like, Kaden, Hadley, how are you? Whether I feel it or not.
Right.
Like it's a declarative moment at that moment that you got to amp yourself up. Like, I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm going to enjoy time with family. I'm going to capitalize on these moments. And it's so important. It's so important because, I mean, just think about your goals. Think about, even if you don't have goals, if you haven't yet set and determined what it is you want to accomplish, or maybe you don't know yet what your passion is, as we go into this and as us as your winning coach here help you to formulate this, I'm telling you, it is so critically important to formulate a mentality of how am I going to physically get myself prepared for success.
Right.
How am I psychologically get myself in a good, healthy place, mentally place? Physiologically, how am I going to blend my mental state with my physical state so that I'm prepared? I'm in a good place to be able to do it.
Exactly.
You have to.
You have to. And I think like in your situation, it's not necessarily of like, okay, I gotta be, I gotta go into my house and I gotta just fake it till I make like. Yes, you do that. But in my mindset, all you really had to tell yourself is I'm going to go in the first 5 seconds. That's all I have to have planned. I'm going to just be joyful, throw my hands up like I'm excited and have a smiling face. Yeah. And it's crazy how everything else flows from that.
It seriously does.
So I think you just really need to plan like the first 5 seconds of any interaction you have. Like say you're angry at an employee.
Yeah.
But you need to not. You realize, okay, I need to get in a right mental state. Okay, so for the first 5 seconds I see this person, I'm going to stand in my power stance, but I'm going to have a smile on my face.
Yeah.
So it will reveal these two different things. And when you plan like your first 5 seconds on the way your body is, I think your mental state automatically takes over in a right atmosphere from that. But
yeah, no, it completely does.
Yeah.
There was, actually, I'm going to save it for the break because it opens a whole nother can of worms where we're going to get into. Hey, stay tuned real quick. Don't forget, subscribe right over there. You can hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the bell to get the notifications when we are going to roll out more great content to you right here on the Legacy Podcast. We'll meet you right back here for the second part of part 2 of your Legacy Podcast right here with your winning coach. Hey, thanks for watching the Legacy Podcast with your winning coach, Kinsley Jordan. Now, don't forget, you can subscribe right now just by hitting the logo right over there, and make sure you hit the bell so you get notified when new great content is available to you. Also, you can follow and keep up with me at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube by just going to Kinsley Jordan. That's my tag where you can find it. Also, if you're looking for a performance coach like me to be able to help you reach your goals, just go to www.kinsleyjordan.com and sign up. I'm right here to help you achieve your goals and build a legacy in your life. So let's get back to the Legacy Podcast with more great content right here. Yo, welcome back to the Legacy Podcast, where we're helping you build a legacy in your life by crushing your goals, igniting your dreams, and forging your legacy. I got once again Brittany Giuliano with me, where we are talking about changing your body, change your mind. The importance of not only mental but physical conditioning, of being ready to be in a place of success. And one of the things we talked about I loved is that you've got to train your mind to excel in excellence.
That's right.
Now think about that. You have to train your mind to excel in excellence. It's not just something that happens. It's something that you have to intentionally focus on. And I love that you said it's mental work.
Mental work.
You've mentioned this multiple times now. Say the statistic again, 80%.
Yeah. So your success, and especially in leadership, is 80% psychology and 20% skills. So if you have the mental work to fight that every morning you can execute because you're mentally ready to go. Yeah. You're going to run circles around those people who have the knowledge, but not the mental work.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about getting ourselves prepared for that mental work, there's a lot that goes into it of actually like physically what you do. We talked a little bit about the rituals. You know, I have my morning ritual. You have your morning ritual that you do to kind of get yourself hyped and prepared for it. But a lot of people ask, well, how do I even get started with that? You know, how do I build this environment that's where my mind is at? Because I don't even think like that. And there's a lot of people that I coach that say, dude, I'm just not on that plane of where you're operating at. My mind doesn't even think about trying to set goals. I just kind of go through the day and accomplish what I need to accomplish, and that's it. So how do we really, I guess the question is, how do we get ourselves in this mindset? How do we build this culture around ourselves?
Yeah.
That's what we think about. We think about preparing ourselves. We think about succeeding. We think about, it's conditioning. How do we condition ourselves to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that the first part of that would be change your body, change your mind. And the second part would be if you can change what you see and what you hear and just like through your senses, then you can really change how your mind is working at that time. So like we talked about, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, but let's say instead of just getting in your car and being sad on the way to work, you decide I'm going to put on like an inspirational song, like I believe I can fly, whatever, or like
can you please sing that?
No, I decided this was a bad idea. I was using fast thinking in that moment, and I didn't take an objective look at me doing that.
Let's slow it down. Let's get back to
let's continue on. But yeah, so like I think that's the important part is if you can start really getting a ritual of like every morning I wake up and I'm going to change what I see and what I hear, whether that's like watching or listening to a podcast, having things around you in your house.
To this podcast.
To this podcast. Or like literally going into your room and you have like, maybe you're a creative person, you really want to like hone in when you go to work. I just want that creativity to flow. So maybe your sanctuary, your room, when you wake up, you just exploded creativity where you feel inspired when you wake up because you see that when you wake up. That's the important part is like if you can change what you see and hear, to psychologists call it prime. If you can prime yourself, all of a sudden subconsciously where you're not even thinking, you are automatically starting to get in that space of like, I'm ready for success. I'm ready for my day because I just listened to that podcast, or I just woke up and I saw the stuff in my room that inspired me. So
I think there's absolutely been times in my life where I say, okay, that's great. You know, I have also listened to podcasts of people who are probably sitting here doing exactly what we're talking about, pontificating about, this is how we fix our lives. But then I've been listening to the podcast and saying, dude, you're so disconnected from the reality that I'm living. Like that's great for you talking about the LSAT and how the law degree entrance exam needs to be changed, but that has no relativity to me whatsoever. Like this is useless podcast. How do we connect that piece to where our listeners are right now, where they say, I'm not even sure where to start with that.
Right. Yeah. And I think what's funny that you said that is because for some people, if they turn that information on, like, and heard that, they'd be like, wow, I'm so inspired to go into my law degree or like whatever. I'm ready. So I think you need to figure out what am I passionate about and then do your research and really start investing financially, whether that means buying books, buying pictures that make you feel creative, like really start investing. So first, I think the important part is like, hey, what do I get inspired with? What kind of builds up a passion within me? For me, that's psychology. You would probably be bored to death if you woke up and listened about neuroscience and how
it's
all
actually
of that.
Very interesting.
Okay, maybe you'd enjoy that. For some of y'all, you'd be like, I am so bored. Like I don't care how chemicals affect my brain and my thoughts. And so I think, just start. If you don't know what you're interested in, I would just start like with basics. I hate calling them self-help, but it's more like strengths, like helping you develop your strengths. And then I think from there, based off of kind of what you're experiencing and where you really tend to be interested in when you hear things, then you start really researching and buying books and that kind of thing.
So we've heard the statement before, you are what you eat, right? So if all you ever eat is fast food, then you're probably going to be a little chunky. So the same thing, I look at the same thing, and I heard something from an executive for one of the businesses around here that own is they put the most focus and priority, not just on who they surround themselves with, but actually focusing and limiting them, because they said you are who you surround yourself with. The 5 people, now think about this, and you're a youth pastor as well. So so the message that you have to the kids, I can almost guarantee you, because I also used to be a youth pastor, that I can almost guarantee you the issues that some of my students are going to have before they even have them, based on who they come in the door with.
That's exactly.
Who you surround
on,
yourself with, how you feed yourself, and I'm not talking about literally food, but how you feed yourself mentally, how you feed yourself spiritually, how you feed yourself psychologically, physically, how you're feeding yourself and what you're putting into your body and into your growth is exactly what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And there's another guy I listen to, Kenneth Cole, who he talks about the proximity principle. It's
Yeah.
another podcast. Nick, remind us that we can actually put a connection to Kenneth Cole, a great podcast where he encourages people and says, listen, if you want to get into this realm of success, if you want to get into this environment if you want to be a pilot, surround yourself with pilots.
Yeah.
If you want to get into financial administration or you want to become an accountant, start surrounding yourself with information that teaches you and inspires you and encourages you, just like you were saying, in whatever your focus area is. And frankly, relationships are so absolutely huge. In fact, one of my coachees for the Winning Coach called the other day, and we talked a couple times about what they wanted to do for school and what they wanted to do for college. And it was so cool to me that they reached out and said, hey, you know that connection who's a banker? Do you think we could sit down and have lunch with him? You could set up an appointment. And that's one of the beautiful things about being the Winning Coach is I'm not going to lie. Can I have one of those moments where you can just say, I have a vast network of people that I'm honored to be connected to, people that I've just gotten to know. So being able to reach out to an executive banker to say, hey, I've got somebody who wants to go to school to be a banker. Can we have lunch together? And you could. That's what the Winning Coach is all about, is being able to encourage people to build those connections. And why those relationships are so important is because you could pick up a book or you could listen to a podcast that talks about these people, or you can invest into it and have a relationship with people, or read a book that they literally wrote of how they got where they want to go. So if you're preparing yourself in a mental space and a psychological space and a physical space, it needs to be in a direction where you're actually pointed towards the target of where you want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
You're preparing yourself for success. You're surrounding yourself with people who are speaking into your life, encouraging words and not derogatory words. How many times on average in a year when you're talking to your youth is what you're talking about the influence of their friends on them? Yeah.
And I try to do that almost every time where it's, like, because the whole concept is, following Jesus' ways, and everybody's like, well, but my friends say that, you know what I mean? And so absolutely, almost every time, it's so important. And I think just kind of as you were talking about this whole idea of surrounding yourself with people, all we're talking about is psychological priming. What you're around primes your mindset for the day. And so your friends are who you hang out with the most. And so you should really be very particular with who you choose to be those 5 in your circle, because in essence you are priming your mind and your thoughts throughout the rest of your day on how you're going to handle certain situations. So for me, I want those people who can psychologically get themselves to a point where they can execute every time, where they're not swayed by their emotions, because we all have those friends. Every day is a new crisis. And we need those.
Gosh.
And we're getting anxious now thinking about it. But how excited do you get when... Go, no, please.
No, it's just
share your frustration.
No, it's just everything is an emergency.
Exactly.
Everything is, and I'm not going to say dramatic because then it has a connotation that it's like it's a negative connotation. But everything is life-changing, life-ending. And I'll go back to our previous segment we were talking about. It's all these fast-thinking reactions. It's all reactive thinking instead of, okay, the sky's not falling. I'm still alive. Okay, that's a good starting place. Okay, great. We can move from here. I know exactly what you mean.
And I think I'm glad you brought, for those of you who watched the first portion, I would rather be surrounded with people who actually engage their slow thinking, because then that primes me throughout the day. That, oh my gosh, okay, all my 5 friends use their slow thinking, and they can, in a snap, train their mind. Hey, I'm ready to execute. Then you, throughout the day, every decision you make, boom, I'm ready to execute. So find friends like that. It's going to be hard, but train your friends and then go hang out with them.
and that's one thing that oftentimes we don't think about, we don't talk about. You talk about it in high school, you talk about it in leadership environments, in school, you talk about these things in kind of the, I don't want to call it fluffy, but in the fluffy environments where it's like, hey, yeah, we need to be leaders. Oh yeah, you need to surround yourself with good friends. But again, it's the whole point of what we're talking about now, about changing your body, changing your mind is this intensive, intentional introspection into who you are, what you want to become, how you want to get there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love the most is that we're training our mind to execute that excellence because we realize the environment we surround ourselves with, the information we surround ourselves with, the people that we surround ourselves with are a huge influence into our mental health ability to drive forward to our goals.
Absolutely.
Huge.
Yeah.
So one of the things we mentioned, and it's just going to be a teaser. I'm just warning you. It's just going to be a teaser. We're not even going to get into it. But it was talking about setting habits because a habit is something that allows you to repeat an action, a set of skills continuously that will allow you to grow success in your life. So it's not something you do once. Habit is something that it becomes who you are. It becomes a part of your life. Why are habits important? And why is it critical to form habits? Because I'm not going to say it yet. Why is it important to form habits?
So why is it important to form habits? I think like that is the best question. If you look at a list of the most successful and the richest people in America, look at their top 5 habits.
Yeah.
They're daily and they are disciplined in doing those habits, which I know we all know. But why are habits so important? I love this question because if you want to accomplish anything, it has to start daily, right? And so long story short, the way we're going about habits and trying to form habits, and especially like New Year's resolutions and trying to form a New Year's resolution habit, the way we're going about it and looking in the long term, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. Woo! You're never going to hold a habit that way.
It's, oh my gosh, that's the teaser. That's what I couldn't tell you about. Is it habit hangups? That's what we're going to be talking about next time when we come back. I mean, we've had a great time here. We're going to be talking about so often we get hung up on the wrong mindset about how we form habits. And they're critically important because being able to set a goal is based upon our ability to execute our habits in a consistent format each and every day as we walk towards our goal. So stay tuned, tune in, make sure you subscribe right over there. You hit the bell so you can get the announcements when this great content rolls out to you right here on your favorite podcast, Legacy Podcast with your winning coach. And again, thank you so much to Brittany Giuliano for bringing us the mental awareness that we need right here. The Madam of Mental Awareness. Hey, we'll catch you next time right here on the Legacy Podcast. See ya.